Every day, genes are changing naturally, and over the centuries, people have taken advantage of this. Our species has created a new kind of breed of animals and plants by crossbreeding them over time. Fermentation is an early use of this new science.
This has created organisms that normally wouldn't happen in nature. Biotechnology allows scientists to modify organisms, specifically and directly. Genetic modification is an extension of the foods and organisms that scientists are using now may become less likely to spoil or go rotten. This could make food grow on barren land that otherwise could not harvest any food.
By doing this, we're helping solve the world hunger issue and bring you an abundant supply of food. People all over the world are feeling the pangs of hunger as we speak, and we have the power to.
Traditional food growing and breeding methods are not at the capability to help this issue. Under today's challenging biotic and abiotic conditions, stress is put on these crops. GM foods can produce larger crops with higher yields. Therefore, we'll be able to supply more people with the necessary amount of food.
Now you may be thinking, how does this affect me? I'm not in that position. I have plenty of food. However, you are affected by genetically modified organisms and food every day, and we're here to help you get a better understanding.
In 1981, biotechnology was defined by the Federal Task Force on Biology as the utilization of biological processes, be they microbial, plant, animal cells, and their constituents, for the provision of goods and services. The first uses of biotechnology on a plant was in the 1990s on tomatoes, which were then used to be pureed. Although it turned out fine, this use of science worried some people because some of the strands of the tomatoes were found to be toxic to the lab rats that they were testing it on. However, now, scientists are predicting that genetically modified plants may become immune to pests, diseases, and herbicides. Also, the ability to remove allergens could become a reality soon. Another wonder would be the growth rate and amount that these plants would be capable of growing at. Biotechnology can be defined as the ability to cut and stitch DNA, the ability to move DNA and the genes from one organism to another, and moreover the ability to persuade the new gene in this new organism that is to make new proteins, and the ability to modify proteins by a process termed protein engineering. At this moment, genetically modified food materials are being used in many foods. For example, cheese, soya, and maize. Most applications are for crop plants, and genetic modifications are for the commercially important ergonomic traits, mostly herbicide tolerance and insect resistance. Such traits that are the result of single gene transfers have limited effectiveness. To alter more complex traits, such as growth rate or drought resistance, is quite another matter. Modern science is still unable to manipulate whole groups of genes. Something scientists have trouble controlling are factors such as flavor and texture due to the fact that these qualities have multiple genes, which makes them more difficult to change or manipulate.
Alison Beatty is a mother of two, expecting one, and is one of the many people who is worried about the effects of genetically modified foods and what they could do to her family.
I'm against it entirely. There hasn't been enough long-term research to support that these things are healthy for us. For all we know, it could cause the development of cancer. Also, who knows? There could be an epidemic or another virus that could do more harm to the population than it would do good.
Where are genetically modified crops grown?
Worldwide, GM crops are grown by at least 6 million farmers in 16 countries. The US, Argentina, Canada, China, Australia, Bulgaria, Colombia, Germany, Honduras, India, Mexico, Romania, South Africa, Spain, and Uruguay. The four main crops that are grown are soybeans, maize, cotton, and oilseed. According to Subhuti Dharamonda, PhD, Director of Institute for Traditional Medicine, Portland, Oregon, Canada is the third largest producer of global transgenic crops with approximately 10.9 million acres dedicated to growing these crops.
Who makes genetically modified crops?
Monsanto produces more than 90% of crops worldwide. Another four companies, Syngenta, Bayer Corp Science, Dow, and DuPont produce the rest. The fact that the production lies in the hands of so few multinational corporations worries some who feel the companies will have too much control over world food production. These companies pressure countries to buy their products and force more traditional farmers out of the market.
Mario Puccini is a 24-year-old piano teacher who resides in Toronto. He believes that genetically modified goods will help our world and future generations.
I think that if we can use this science to help our planet and the people in it, our children and their children will grow up in a better place. With genetically modified food being able to grow faster and in higher quantity than natural organisms, we will be able to get a hold of our world hunger. If they start distributing genetically modified foods in our supermarkets, they should be labeled so that people have a choice to buy them or not.
There are many benefits to genetically modified organisms. Benefit number 1 is nutrition. Foods that lack certain vitamins or minerals can be genetically modified so they can contain them. Benefit number 2, medical. Similar to nutrition, genetically modified organisms can be medically beneficial to less wealthy countries because scientists are figuring out how to put edible vaccines into them. Benefit number 3, resistance from diseases. Crops may be engineered by scientists to be resistant to many common diseases and fungi that they are exposed to. Benefit number 4, weather tolerance. As less land is available for crop growth, farmers are forced to use soil that is not ideal for crop growth. Also, some of these areas face drought and other unfavorable growing conditions, such as cold mornings that can produce frost. Scientists are trying to genetically engineer crops that can withstand these conditions. Benefit number 5, tolerance of herbicides. Crops that are engineered to withstand being sprayed by one strong herbicide will enable farmers to use less money and resources trying to eliminate weeds by using many different herbicides.
Many different groups of people have been outspoken against genetically modified organisms. Some of these groups include religious groups, environmental groups, and public concern groups. Some of the main genetically modified organism controversies are 1. Health concerns. Scientists are worried that by adding new foreign genes to certain foods, humans could react negatively to the foods. Another health concern involves food allergies. By modifying or adding a new gene to a food, a person eating it could have an allergic reaction. Number 2, economic concerns. A big concern is that the cost of genetically modified seeds will be too expensive for farmers in undeveloped countries, and therefore those countries will fall further behind in the developed countries. Number 3, environmental concern. It has been discovered that some organisms can be affected by genetically modified organisms, even though they're not directly linked. Similar to the unintentional harm genetically modified organisms can cause, it is also a concern that the genetically modified organisms will breed with other organisms located near them, and new organism that is created will also have the genetically modified genes.
There is still a very large controversy surrounding genetically modified organisms and food, and since it's only a fairly new concept that's only been recently put into motion, we cannot foresee the effect of them on future generations.